I'd like to welcome to Art in the Air Spotlight, or returning to us, is Joseph F. Pete. Of course, most of you who are familiar with the NWI Times, he's a reporter there, takes care of everything from business and just about any topic up. But he's also an author. He's got a new book out I think this is the fifth book, called Lost Treasures of Indiana. Previously, he's done like Lost East Chicago and the Harbor. One of his first ones was 100 Things to Do in Gary and Northwest Indiana Before You Die, and many, many others. Joseph, welcome back to Art in the Air Spotlight.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it's thank you for another fascinating book. It's just amazing.
Oh, thank you. Yes, yeah. The Reedy Press, one of my publishers, had asked me to write this one as part of a series they're doing on lost treasures. There's also like a Lost Treasures of St. Louis, where they're from, a Lost Treasures of Delaware, Lost Treasures of Omaha, and so forth. It's part of a national series. But the previous books I've written for them have kind of been travelogue with interspersed with a bit of history. This one is more historical in nature. It's kind of focusing on bygone places throughout the state and all facets, from bygone museums to department stores to restaurants to natural landmarks like the Hoosier Slide in Michigan City that had once been a 200-foot tall sand dune, one of the state's top tourist attractions, and ended up getting hauled away by the Ball Company in Muncie to make ball jars. But it really looks at a number of different. It looks at not only but the bygone places that kind of really define the state, like places people fondly remember, like the Star Plaza Theater, or some of the restaurants, or the Salvador's Kitty Land in Cherville. Some of the restaurants people might fondly remember, Strongbow Inn in Valpo, or the Country Lounge in Hobart, or the music places like the DC Country Junction in Lowell, which was known for, its line dancing, and they even had like zoo animals outside and everything. But it also kind of looks at the contributions Hoosiers have made to the country. One of the guiding quotes was from Kurt Vonnegut about wherever I go, I always find a Hoosier doing something important there. And it looks at like, some of the significant art movements we've had in the Hoosier State, the Brown County Artist Colony, the Golden Age of Indiana literature, all the great artists to emerge from the Heron Art Institute in Indianapolis, but a lot of the not only the bygone places, but just Indiana's contributions to the world, from the early automakers that helped competed with Detroit in kind of the early fledgling days of the auto industry, and came up with a lot of the innovations that helped drive it, like the rear view mirror, rubber tires, things of that nature, are all pioneered here in the Hoosier State. People don't like realize like how much we've contributed. Everything from Wonder Bread to the Gatling gun to tomato juice was invented in French Lick,
Push
Indiana.
button car buttons. That's pretty cool. The radio buttons, right?
Oh, yes,
Push button car
absolutely. Yeah.
radio buttons. That was cool. You know what I also like is that you do add the history to it though. Like it was the first time I knew that Merrill's High Decker, that place was the inspiration for Wolfman Jack's booth in American Graffiti. That was very interesting.
Oh yeah, that's an incredible one too, because like that was, I lived in Indianapolis for a while. I drove by there by the fairgrounds quite frequently, and you just didn't realize, fully the history of some of those places. Where Dick Sumner ended up being in the DJ Hall of Fame, very prominent DJ in the Boston area for many years. He got his start there on WIBC doing like a rock program for teeny boppers during the 1950s. That was like by far the most popular at the era. But he was in a booth at the top of this drive-in. The kids would go to the drive-in, they would eat, the burgers and fries and shakes, but they would also be listening to his radio show live. He would have bands there. The audience would come in and they'd take part in the interviews. They'd ask questions of the bands. They did it. They're famous for doing thing where they would ask the audience to honk if they wanted to keep playing the record, or honk if they wanted to get rid of it. There
Yeah,
was
to
a
break
case
it.
where one of the patrons hated the record to the point of he pulled out a gun and shot the vinyl record to smithereens, like right there in the parking lot. And it's just like there's such a rich history of all these places from Lake Michigan down to the Ohio River. It has a lot of Indianapolis stuff, but also a lot of Northwest Indiana stuff since I'm from here.
I was going to say this is a little bit departure because most of your things have been focused in Northwest Indiana, and this has taken you throughout the state of Indiana a lot more. So it's probably a little bit more difficult to research because you had to probably get out of the local area here to do that.
It was in a sense, but I did live and work as a reporter down in Indianapolis, and I went to college in Bloomington, and I pretty much traveled all over the Hoosier State. I've been to museums, and I've been to pretty much every significant city or town in the state. I've been to all the museums. I've traveled and studied Indiana history for years, but this one was a little bit more intensive because I had to talk to historical societies and libraries all across the state to make sure I wasn't both to collect some of the excellent historical photos that are in the book, but also to make sure I wasn't omitting too many like prominent places like Tomlinson Hall or the Pembroke Arcade in Indianapolis. I wanted to make sure that if somebody would say bygone landmark in like Muncie or Anderson or whatever, that it was definitely included.
Right. Now, what's your next project? I mean, it seems like you're cranking out a book almost every year or something about like that. Do you have your sights on something else that you have coming down the tubes?
Oh, I've been asked to write Lost Crown Point by the History Press. That most likely will be my next one. I have a file of ideas, though, of future books I'd like to write on, local history in Northwest Indiana, Chicagoland, the state. It's just a subject that endlessly fascinates me. Yes, this book was a real treasure to write. A lot of it is very personal. I was inspired by places like when they asked me to write it, immediately jumped out being from kind of the Gary Metro, where you had a lot of landmarks that were abandoned, like VJ Records that first put out the Beatles, to the auditorium where the Jackson Five first competed in the talent show. But one place that particularly meant a lot to me was the Town Theater in Highland, where they had the intermissions with the cake and coffee and very eccentric owners. And I just, it's a treasure that's like forever gone. And I really want to remember places like that.
Well, we'd like to thank you for coming on Art in the Air Spotlight. The new book is The Lost Treasures of All of Indiana by Joseph S. Peet, and it's available probably at every bookstore. We're doing a whole bunch of book signings. I know I've been seeing it on Facebook and such. So thank you very much for coming on the show and sharing your new book.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure.
Oh, thank you.
Art on the Air Spotlight and the complete 1-hour program on Sunday is brought to you by Ember Forge Consulting, thoughtful marketing and digital learning built to express your purpose and grow your reach. Learn more at emberforgeconsulting.com/grow.